with the Abraham Accords program, so he's not going to discourage Morocco's rapprochement with Israel. But my sense is that he will go back and say, look, the US position has historically been to support the UN mediation process in Western Sahara, flawed and stalled as it is, and then revert back to that and perhaps come up with some sort of new initiative at the UNHQ. Biden has appointed a very experienced UN ambassador to UNHQ in New York, Linda Thomas Greenfield, who knows the Sahrawi dossier, knows Africa and the Middle East well. And I suspect they will then push for some new UN initiative on the process without sort of involving themselves in bilateral deals between Morocco and Israel.
Well, do they push a new initiative and thus run the risk of annoying Morocco? Or, Patrick, do they, just simply let what Donald Trump promised about Western Sahara lie fallow?
I think, given that most of the states in the African Union still maintain that their support for the UN initiative, and would want to see some sort of UN brokered referendum or vote on the issue, or some restart of talks between the Polisario and the Sahrawi people and the Moroccan government, I suspect that's where the US would come down. But Biden's plate is going to be so full of a lot of very difficult foreign policy issues. I can't see they're going to spend a lot of time on it. But I don't think they'll just let that Trump sort of transactional deal between Morocco and the Western Sahara just continue without some sort of rebuttal.
Leo Jacinto, when it comes to the Middle East, it's not just about normalization of ties, it's about how you handle Iran. The year began with the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the senior commander of the Revolutionary Guards, by a U.S. drone. We had the killing of a nuclear scientist towards the end of the year. Has Donald Trump made it impossible for Joe Biden to return to the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, I mean, you're asking me to look into the crystal ball. I would think that on the foreign policy front, after getting back into the Paris Climate Accord, Iran would take up a lot of Biden's attention, and certainly an effort to revive the JCPOA, the nuclear the deal that Trump got the U.S. out of. Only because Iran is facing so much pressure on so many borders, on its Afghan border, on its Iraq border, and a very destabilized and insecure Iran is a very dangerous entity, and Biden understands that very well. So the Trump policy of being very, very hard on Iran, Biden is going to have to walk that down back, but carefully.
But carefully, and it just doesn't all depend on whether or not it returns to the nuclear deal on the United States. It also depends on Iran. We saw the recent hanging of journalist turned activist Ruhollah Azzam. It was seen as a victory of the hardliners over the moderates in Tehran. He'd been lured to Iraq from Europe before popping up blindfolded on state television. That execution, Borzou Daragahi, does it tell you that, well, the hardliners have won the day and there'll be no going back to that nuclear deal or to some sort of compromise?
No, I don't think so. I think that, first of all, the nuclear deal is important to the Europeans, and it's extremely important to the Europeans. It's still viewed as a triumph of European diplomacy, and I think the Biden team definitely understands that. And they see restoring the JCPOA not just as a way of getting back into a deal that they themselves in many ways negotiated under the previous administration, but a way of restoring good relations and good communication with Europe and the rest of the NATO partners and so on. And so with one stroke of the pen, Biden can just sign an executive order saying all, White House sanctions that were imposed after January 21st, 2017 are removed. And with that, Iran could quickly return to compliance in terms of its stockpile of weapons and its rate of producing enriched fissile material. And that could be very easily, and it could also be branded in both capitals. In Tehran, a great victory for Iran. We got the U.S. to go back to the deal. And in Washington, it could be branded as, here's the first step towards coming up with a better deal, whether they end up coming up with that better deal or not.
But then in that case, how does Joe Biden handle the Saudis and the Israelis?
I mean, you just basically do what Obama did, which is, where he comes from, which is, sell them some weapons and tell them to, relax.